Sure. I mean, we have time. Yeah, I'm trying to think if we want to sign in on another computer or just keep this one and then have people, I don't know, it's kind of a toss up. Or I can just kind of let Peter and Stephen know what communities are represented in the room. Alicia just doesn't want to come up front. Okay. Okay, so should we do that with my computer? I'm here. I just need to, if somebody wants to grab my computer and just, yeah, Alex just, well, no, but if you just want to go to the calendar real quick and open it up. Anyway, thanks for your patience, Peter. Yeah, you are Peter. Perfect. Okay. We will get started here as soon as we get Stephen in the room. Thanks, Alex. You'll mute there. You're good. And then I have something to hand out to you all, and that's basically, sorry, Alex has got this on lock. Okay, so should we have everybody go? Well, should we wait until Stephen gets into the room before we do introductions, Rita? Okay. Thanks for your patience, Peter. As soon as Stephen comes in, we'll do a quick round of introductions so you can meet kind of some of our Healthy Kids, Healthy coordinators and the communities that they represent around the state. And then we'll let you and Stephen take it from there. A little bit of background for you all, because I can do that before our other colleague, Stephen Saavedra. He's the deputy county manager that represents San Juan County up in Patience, neck of the woods. Woo, woo. I've got some documents at my desk that I'll hand out to you all in a few minutes after Stephen and Peter start taking it away. And what I've done, similar to the document that I handed you all yesterday, that summarized all of the projects that have been funded to date in your communities from the Outdoor Recreation Division that relates to built environment projects to improve, of course, physical activity in those in your communities. I've done the same thing with your ISIP lists. And ISIP is a term that we'll be using regularly in your work around the built environment. And that stands for, it's an acronym that stands for Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan. And that's a list that represents all of the funded projects, here's Stephen, that any municipality, it could be the city of Farmington, it could be the city of Silver City, whatever, or it could be Zuni Pueblo. Every one of these entities has an ISIP list, and any project that wants to be funded, it could be a new crosswalk, a new stop sign, road repairs, new paint, whatever it might be, a new sidewalk, ADA accessibility for people with disabilities, needs to go on an ISIP list before it can be funded. And so I have your ISIP lists for every single one of our communities that's represented in Healthy Kids, and I've outlined those current ISIP lists for you all in a document, and I'm going to give those to you. And then in those future meetings that I set up with you all, we can review those projects, and you're going to get some tips and tricks today. Hey, Stephen, what's happening? You're going to get some tips and tricks today from Stephen and from Peter about the work that they're doing across San Juan County that's going to relate to the kinds of things that we want to do across Healthy Kids in New Mexico to do more work in the built environment, to improve connectivity, to create more opportunities for walking and biking so that people aren't using cars every time they need to get to everyday destinations, to improve our Safe Routes to School programming so that we get our kids walking and rolling to school more often, not just on International Walk and Roll to School Day and National Bike and Roll to School Day in October and May each year, right? Improving the quality and the robust nature of our physical activity in communities and in schools across Healthy Kids. And so we've got two pros in the room here today. Stephen was humble last time we talked to him and we set up this meeting. But the reason we got connected to Stephen was we were working with Robin Graham. She's one of Elsa's colleagues. You remember Elsa presented to us last year about bike boulevards at our Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities training. They're in the active transportation program at Department of Transportation. We were going to work with her to set up the training that we're doing today, but she left DOT to get a job with state parks. And so we scrambled, and Rita and I were like, what can we do? And Evan Pilling, who you all met yesterday afternoon through Outdoor Rec, said you ought to talk to Steven Saavedra and crew up in San Juan County because they've cracked the code when it comes to two different grant programs that they're going to tell you about today. That's transportation alternatives and recreational trails. Those are two sources of federal grant funding that will that'll help improve access to our projects in the built environment that are going to fund trails and connectivity and all the different things that we want to do. And so with that, like I said, Steven Saavedra is the Deputy County Manager. Peter, are you the Director of the MPO for the City of Farmington? Remind me.
So yeah, I'm the MPO Director, not for the city. We cover the urbanized area of the county. So we're kind of a regional entity, if you will.
Perfect. And so with that being said, how about you two guys introduce yourselves and just give a brief background of your position? And then so that you know who's in the room and who's represented, we're going to take that laptop that has my name on it, which Alex is waving through. And each one of our members that represent our coalition here through Healthy Kids, they're just going to give a quick introduction so you all know who is in the room. Take it away. Steven, you want to go first?
Steven, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's definitely an opportunity to share some insight on what we've been able to do. I will say I don't think we've cracked the code. I think we've just been successful in engaging in an opportunity. My name is Steven Saavedra. I'm the Deputy County Manager here in the Four Corners area of San Juan County. A beautiful place. If you ever get the opportunity to come out here, get out and about and just enjoy the area of New Mexico.
Thanks for being here, Steven. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Excuse me. I am Peter Koeppel. Like I said, I'm the Director of the Farmington Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are a federally chartered transportation planning body covering the urbanized parts of San Juan County. So the cities of Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, Kirtland, as well as San Juan County. So we're a regional transportation planning body, and we work closely with our local entities.
Great. All right, let's let Healthy Kids introduce themselves, starting with Miss Lori, maybe here in the front corner. It's muted. Sorry, let me.
Can you mute that?
Yeah, let me. I might have. Am I going to have to mute and kill my?
Yeah.
Let me kill the speaker. Okay, we should be good.
Hi, I'm Lori Collins from Roosevelt County.
I'm Kyla Hooten from Curry County.
Patience Williams from San Juan County.
Mikayla Duran, PED.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Rodriguez from the New Mexico within the department.
Healthy Kids, Healthy Preschool Coordinator.
Roberto Zavala, Healthy Kids, Healthy Preschool Coordinator in Southern New Mexico.
Steven and Peter, hi, I'm Rita Condon, and I'm the Director of the Obesity, Nutrition, and Physical Activity Program. And this is work we do in Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities to increase opportunities for physical activity and for children, our community members.
Awesome. So you all see where we use our limited federal and state funding as wisely and as responsibly as we can. And so we'd love to be in all 33 of New Mexico's counties. And someday maybe the Obesity, Nutrition, and Physical Activity Program and Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities will be. But as of right now, we're working in, strategic areas around the state where we know there's high need. and where we have great partnerships to do that work. And so that being said, I think we're ready to turn it over to you all. You take it away. We've got a number of questions that we discussed with Stephen ahead of time to kind of game out some of the things that we know would be of use to our coordinators. And so you all feel free to take it away. If you have slides to share, we'd love to see any examples you have. And then we have some questions to ask in the interim if there's any additional information that we need along the way. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good, Stephen. I've got some slides about these two federal programs. I mean, it's a little bit dry, but it is real money. So if you'd like, I can start with that, unless and then Stephen can maybe chime in on what the county actually did with some of the grants that they did get. Let me just figure out how to share my screen. Hang on.
Yeah, hopefully at the top right corner.
Yeah, just give me a sec.
Yes, no rush.
Not that. Hang on just a minute. Where is it? Sorry, I've got too many tabs. Let's. Can you see this? Are you able to see what I'm sharing?
Peter, I can see it.
Okay, I think we may have lost the connection. No, let's see. So Stephen, I can see you moving.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Peter. We're having some.
All right, it looks like we're good again. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened, but Peter, hopefully we can hear you and we can see your PowerPoint.
Can you see the
Slides.
Can you see the screen? Are you able to see what I'm sharing?
That's the one.
Sorry, Peter, we couldn't hear you in the radio.
Do you think the spatial audio or anything different? Maybe if
That one. They're muted. Did you?
no, they're not. We were muted, but oh, this silly tech stuff. This should be the external speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to use that tablet? Check that out real quick.
There we go.
There we go.
That's weird. Oh no, I think it just picked this up.
Just test.
Peter, can you try speaking again?
Yes, can you hear me?
But yeah, I don't know what the deal is with the tech here, but we can hear you. So go ahead and roll.
Okay, and can you see the screen I'm sharing? Okay, cool. So like I said briefly, I'll just briefly talk about who we are at the MPO and what we do, and then I'll talk about transportation alternatives and the Recreational Trails program. So we are the Farmington Metropolitan Planning Organization. Under federal law, every region with a population of 50,000 or more has to have what we call an MPO under the Federal Highway Act of 1962. The idea is to convene regional stakeholders to do transportation planning for the region looking forward. So we know that transportation issues do not stop at jurisdictional boundaries. So the idea behind metropolitan planning is to look at the bigger picture. So overall, there's about 400 plus MPOs in the country. We're on the smaller side, but we're by no means the smallest. This is the area we cover. which is primarily the northeastern part of San Juan County. This, like I said earlier, the cities of Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, Kirtland, and then a lot of unincorporated San Juan County up to the Colorado state line, east to the Rio Arriba County line, essentially all of the non-tribal parts of San Juan County. And I'll switch gears now and talk about these two funding programs that we administer, because as the MPO, we are responsible for dealing with federal funding for transportation that comes through our region. Most of it, or a lot of it, is kind of road and bridge and highway typical stuff, but there's a couple of programs that fund the things I think that you're more interested in. So bicycling, pedestrian stuff, things for, safety improvements, things like that. So there's two programs I'll go through. The first one is TAP, as we call it, Transportation Alternatives. And I apologize for these slides. There's going to be a lot of text, and they might be worth reading through later. But TAP, as the name suggests, Transportation Alternatives, is primarily used for bike and pedestrian facilities. It has a lot of other eligible project types that I'll get to on the next slide. But in my experience, it's typically used for sidewalks, bike facilities, things like that. Again, this is probably too small for you to read, but you can do a lot of things with this. Safety programs, removing advertising for beautification, managing vegetation on the side of the road, which is less of a problem in New Mexico than it is in more in less arid regions. Stormwater management, things like that. So it runs the gamut, but typically we here, and in my professional experience, we've used TAP for a lot of bike and pedestrian stuff. The big issue, or not issue, the big catch with TAP is that the project has to serve what we would call a transportation purpose. The next program I'm going to talk about, Recreational Trails, does not have that. But basically, the idea is it cannot be purely recreational. So you can kind of squint and get away with quite a bit. If it's a bike trail somewhat parallel to a road, you can say it has a transportation purpose. But if you're looking at a mountain bike trail that's just a loop that doesn't connect anything, that would not be eligible for this project, for this program, for example. So it has to serve a transportation purpose. Again, that is interpreted with pretty wide latitude, but just FYI. And who's eligible? That's always the big question. And we are sort of the pass-through middleman, if you will. This goes to NMDOT ultimately. The funding is federal, but local governments, tribal governments, regional entities, but not us, can apply. Transit agencies, the feds can apparently apply, although I've seldom seen that. School districts have applied in the past. That's always an interesting one. So there's lots of eligibility, and typically I would recommend you work with a local or tribal government to get this done. They typically have the capacity and the knowledge to navigate the federal funding requirements. And Stephen can maybe speak to that more later, because once you get federal funding involved, things do get a little bit more complex with reporting and whatnot than if it's purely state or local funding. Who cannot apply is just nonprofits as direct subrecipients. So again, we would urge nonprofits to partner with a city or a county or a school district, let's say. Same thing for us. I can't apply directly, but I can partner with an eligible entity. NMDOT designates certain local governments and entities as high risk if they have a history of poor performance, let's say, of managing state or federal funding. And they're not eligible. You need to make sure you have a compliant ADA policy for your entity, and so on. So there's various strings attached, but we, at least in our region, have never had an issue with non-eligible entities trying to apply. It's typically cities and counties that have gone after this money. To give you an idea, so we're currently in federal fiscal year 26 at the end of it, and these are the kind of the funding amounts that the state received for this and next federal fiscal year. I should back up and say that the future funding of these programs is a little bit murky because the federal transportation bill expires at the end of this federal fiscal year. So at the end of September, there's no new one in place. We'll probably get an extension with similar dollar amounts going forward, but as of right now, we don't know. And so there's no current funding application round open yet, but it's good that you're talking about this stuff now. So you can, excuse me, what did I do? So you can then be prepared to apply in the future should you so want to. The point, and the other thing to note is that the funding for this program is divided up by population bands. So for regions of particular sizes. So we, for example, here in the Farmington region are in the population band of 50,000 to 200,000. So there's a $1.4 million available for us. And then there's different funding pots. And I think my understanding, and as you can see in the bottom, there's about $5 million that can be used anywhere in the state. NMDOT would know more, but my understanding is that they've had trouble spending money in these less than 5,000 population areas, just because there's obviously need, but the question is who would be some of these villages are either not incorporated or don't have the capacity. So NMDOT, like I said, would know more, but I think there's an opportunity there to spend some money that maybe has gone unspent because there's just not either the capacity or the knowledge about these types of programs in those smaller areas. We typically don't have a problem applying and spending the money, nor do our other metropolitan partners in Albuquerque or Santa Fe or Las Cruces. These are some of the examples that I just briefly pulled. I'm sure we have more. Stephen, I know, can talk more about the Kirtland multi-use path that San Juan County has been working on. The city of Farmington got some money for a trail extension along the Animas River. We've done a couple of sidewalk and ADA projects here in town as well. And it just gives you kind of a flavor because the Kirtland one is more rural-ish, I guess I would say. It connects schools out in near the town of Kirtland, but it's a different vibe than it is, Sunset Avenue, which is right next to Farmington High School, for example. Maybe I'll take a quick break and let Stephen maybe talk briefly about that project, just to give you an idea of what they did, because it's really neat.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So within the Kirtland multi-use path, I think it's an example where our public works director, Nick Perel, was able to utilize these funds, work with Peter, of course, with the Department of Transportation, and obviously working with our elected officials and bringing forth the idea that we have a right-of-way, a county road that's in a rural area, but is connected to a school. And wanted to put forward a walking path that is adjacent to the school and that it would be utilized by students, but also individuals within the community. What had happened with this project, and there's been a few phases right now, has gotten a lot of use and has gotten a lot of high regards. And I do want to caution you with some of the trails that we put forward. Not all of them are seen with open arms. A lot of times we can get some questions, some concerns on who is going to utilize the trails and what type of nefarious activities could occur. Nevertheless, with this Kirtland multi-use path, that has been the complete opposite sentiment. It has been well regarded by the community, the town of Kirtland. In fact, there is plans to continue that multi-use path all the way down to one of our senior centers, Lower Valley. And in fact, where that sentiment is coming forward to continue to push this idea of this walking path so that it is expanded is actually individuals from the senior community. We do hold public meetings, especially at the senior centers, and a lot of individuals have expressed that they would like to see that expanded. And the reality is they've indicated that sidewalks or lack thereof are not always in the greatest shape. And this is a relatively flat, wide area that can be utilized for walking and biking, and they enjoy to get around. And so we do have it on our radar to continue to show the success. And then I'll also use as an example of where we do put in a multi-use path, that it does not bring nefarious activities. In fact, you have anywhere from young generations to older generations utilizing it in a safe manner.
And I'll just follow up and say that obviously the federal funding picture, like I mentioned, is murky, but typically DOT will put out calls for projects every couple of years, let's say. I mean, there's no set schedule. They tend to program out a few years into the future, especially when there's more certainty in the federal funding picture. That kind of varies. So right now we're in a holding pattern, but these programs aren't going away. There doesn't seem to be any appetite for this. Like, they might change what is eligible. for a while you could renovate, you could do a transportation museum with this kind of funding. And that I think it's one of those things that, one of those fraud, waste, and abuse in quotation marks reports to Congress where people were outraged that transportation money was spent on a museum. I mean, whatever. So those things change over time, but the overall core stuff that you can do with these programs, I don't think is going to go away. It's just a matter of getting more certainty into the funding picture going forward. And if you'd like, I'll continue to talk about the Recreational Trails Program, which is the other one of the other programs that we deal with on federal funding. And this one, again, the name is pretty self-explanatory. We are funding, and these can be unlike transportation alternatives, these projects can be purely recreational. The big issue here, not issue, but if you will, differentiator between the types of projects is motorized versus non-motorized, or projects that serve both. So when you're talking motorized, it's either snowmobiles or ATVs or whatnot versus pure hiking, biking trails. And then don't get me started on the whole e-bike situation, because that's another I don't, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of straddles the line between motorized and non. But at any rate, this is another program that DOT administers and we're the pass-through for, and that San Juan County has had great success in leveraging and cooperating with BLM, because we do have a lot of BLM land up here. And again, the eligibilities are essentially the same, so I don't need to spend too much time on that. And given I mean, again, I do think that local and county governments are probably best suited for these kind of things, just because of the type of facilities that you end up getting. And again, a lot of text, but there's five different categories, going from completely non-motorized to what they call diverse, which allows both types of motorized and non-motorized, uses, and then purely motorized. Nobody's going to keep you off these facilities, but we're talking about what the design intent is. You can obviously keep vehicles off of trails, but you can't necessarily keep people off of facilities that are made for vehicles, let's say, especially out in the backcountry here. There's less money statewide, and it's also divided up by these categories. So here we're not worried about population because these are more recreational. It's more, how do we split up the money based on what the intended use is? And here, again, anecdotally, what I've heard from DOT is that the motorized money does not always is the harder one to spend, because there's fewer projects that are 100%, especially in New Mexico, that are 100% intended for motorized uses. So, that's not exactly what you're looking for, but just FYI. And again, I'll turn it over to Stephen again, because the county has done some really cool stuff on BLM land here with RTP money. If you're into mountain biking, definitely come check it out.
So with the RTP projects that we've had success on, the thing I, just start with, and I'll get it a little bit more into my presentation with some slides, is, it always was deemed as a cost or a curse for San Juan County, in that we have all this public land and only 6.5% of it is private. So what we wanted to do is utilize an asset that otherwise seemed like a burden, and utilize that for recreation purposes. And so part of these projects consist of working with Bureau of Land Management, making sure that they have full awareness and that they would support the projects, specifically because it's in their jurisdiction. And without their support, these projects would not go forward. The Glade Run trails, that has been an area where both pedestrian and mountain bike trails have been designed and constructed. And then currently right now with the Alien Run Recreation and Angel Peak area, that's currently in design. And with both of these type of projects under RTP, I will caution, there is a 2-year window to get a project awarded, out to bid, out to design, and then to construction. And so though it may seem like 2 years is a long period of time, it's a very short window, especially when you have procurement rules that can hinder it. I would just say, especially within other communities, I think it's important to start, if there's any future project that you have in mind, identify who owns the property, if it's the Forest Service or if it's the Bureau of Land Management, have those conversations, at least right now, to get their feedback. I think what has allowed us to be successful, BLM has been very welcoming and opened the door, and we discuss the projects before we even apply, just to make sure that we're not going to set ourselves up for failure or they. And part of that reason is if they are on other pieces of property like the federal government, they're responsible for maintaining them. And so they now have a burden to make sure that they're going to be in good standing. Another resource that I would say with a lot of these planning documents, though they may not be able or eligible to apply, they can assist, is your local council of governments, your COGs. They may have the expertise to be able to fund the projects, or not fund the projects, to be able to help write the grant application and then put forward a successful application for consideration. But since both San Juan County has had success, and what we've tried to do, or what we're trying to do with different recreation projects, is spread it out throughout the region. So it's not just Farmington has all these amenities, or the town of Kirtland. We are also looking to the city of Aztec area, the city of Bloomfield, and everywhere in between. We are a large a county, size of Connecticut. We know we cannot do everything for everyone. But we want to be able to spread that wealth around as much as possible, because we do have limitations in our transportation system, and not everybody can go from one end of the county to the next.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much what I had as an introduction to these two programs. So if there's any questions, I can try and answer them.
Yeah, Peter, I know you mentioned that the waters or the future outlook was a bit murky just in terms of the funding cycles for the two grant programs. But I didn't know if you all are going to get into this later with other slides, feel free to just tell us to wait for that. But in terms of the next round of funding, is there a timeline that our coordinators who are helping their councils of government and local municipalities to potentially, get geared up for applying for this funding, when they should be looking to be ready for that? Is it going to be sometime this year that there'll be applications for FY27, or what does that next round application cycle look like?
I think we're looking at so federal fiscal year 28 and later, and we're not expecting anything this year. After, I would imagine maybe something will come out next spring, but don't quote me on that. It's nothing imminent, but it's always good to have a project in your back pocket. And obviously the tough thing for a lot of local governments is, and Stephen could speak to this better, is, having the match ready, because, I can tell you to be ready, but it's hard for me to tell you to have, X $100,000 just sitting there for the eventuality that a call for projects becomes available.
Yeah, and that's a good point Peter raises. And in smaller communities, that becomes a lot more difficult. And we all have different demands and in different directions from elected officials and so forth. But to have the match funds available can be a detriment. And so I think the opportunity right now is to start planning it and to identify, is this a project for that community that they want to see success on? If so, then there's going to have to be the sacrifice of having the match funds available. Having to front the money up front, because that could be difficult. We have the luxury where if the project is $2 million, we have $2 million available in cash flow, since this is a reimbursement. And so if you're a smaller community, that can become a detriment. And then of course, having the expertise within the staff to be able, from finance to the engineering, to be able to have a good procurement system, those are three elements that I would look at least right now. So when the funding or the opportunity does come up in fiscal year 28, you'd have a realistic and competitive shot at it.
And I would also just add, Stephen jogged my memory, the state has established, the legislature has established a match fund for local governments. And I'm not an expert on this, but basically it'll help you put up the 14.56% match for federal programs. The idea is to leverage federal funds using state funds and I don't know if it's oversubscribed. I assume it's pretty popular, but I don't know. I don't know that anybody here has used it, but it's certainly a neat idea.
And we have used it for other
Okay.
projects, and it has been beneficial, especially if there's that federal nexus, and that is a requirement, where the state of New Mexico will help cover that cost.
Awesome. Thank you all. Did the match fund one pager end up in everybody's folder? Okay. Well, that I have a one pager that's available through DOT or whoever put it together on the match fund. And so that's for your local communities. If they're having trouble coming up with that, for anybody who missed it, it's a 14.56% match. So essentially, our communities have to front the costs of these projects, and then it's a reimbursable to the grant, then the money gets reimbursed. But the communities have to have 14.56% of that is the match that comes from the community. And so that's something important that in the planning has to be considered. Can you all go over, other than just strict cash, are there any other ways in terms of in-kind or staff time or any other kinds of resources that communities can use as part of that match, other than just we've put up, $50,000 as something that's representing our 14% match for these grants?
Stephen, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like in-kind time, don't believe that's an eligible factor. It has been, at least from our experience, that percentage amount that's required, just because of reporting purposes.
Before we move on to Stephen's slides, are there any questions from the group that have come up for you all?
Okay. We have a whole list of questions after Stephen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we've obviously got a bunch more questions on our end, but Stephen, do you want to roll with some of your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do to try to hopefully mitigate some of the technical complications that could come up, I'm going to join from this meeting on my laptop and then share my screen so I don't lose you in the meantime.
Okay,
hopefully
perfect.
this works. I'm crossing my fingers. So you're going to see me join this meeting. And then one thing that I did want to talk about before I get started is recreation within San Juan County. Though it has existed from generations, from hunting to getting out in the backcountry, I would say that there has been a concerted effort within the last 10 years from the communities in large, city of Farmington, San Juan County, and then of course the other cities, in that San Juan County, for the most part, has been an oil and gas community that has been the bread and butter for a lot of individuals in terms of the local economy. And with fluctuations in that market, the community realized that it's going to need to pivot and diversify its economy. Amplifying that, there was coal-fired plants within the community. The Energy Transition Act was in place, and as a result, one of the coal-fired plants closed, and so then that amplified the need that we're going to again need to shift and pivot. So back in 2015, 2014 timeframe, City of Farmington had worked on trying to expand outdoor recreation, and they have done a fairly good job in that manner. And as a result, they had started a Jolt Your Journey campaign to get people out and about, specifically targeting active families. So I'm going to join the meeting. Hopefully it pops up. I am going to share. Please let me know if you're able to see this PowerPoint.
Yes, we got it.
All right. So as a result of some of the different economic activities within the community, San Juan County wanted to approach this strategically. We had a few different initiatives, from boat ramps to trails but we just didn't want to have an approach where we're just taking a shotgun approach and just doing whatever we think is going to be going to have an appetite for the community at the time. We wanted to actually hear from the community. Simultaneously, San Juan County is working on behavioral health initiatives, mental resources, specifically right during COVID and after COVID. And so we had looked at outdoor recreation in a way where let's be able to try to combat economic needs for our community, physical health needs within San Juan County, and mental health needs within San Juan County. And let's also make sure that we're not catering to one user group. And the best way to try to do that is put together a master plan for the area and really hear from individuals in what they like to do, what they want to do, where those needs are at. And so as a result, we applied for a outdoor recreation grant through ORD, working with Carl Colonius. Evan Pillings was not with the state at the time, but what we wanted to do is work with a consultant group to identify all of San Juan County, not just the municipalities, but also look at the tribal area as well, and of course the federal government and state government. So what we did is we had kicked off this master plan in 2024, and hopefully everybody can still see that. And here were some of the goals. We wanted to foster public health. We wanted to identify new areas of recreation. We wanted to be able to ensure that when we're looking at outdoor recreation, that we're looking at it from an equitable lens. And then, of course, we're setting ourselves up for success and not failure. And so part of this was looking at quality of life. I wanted to make sure that, you know, when it comes to economic development and people are looking at our area, that there is amenities suitable for them. And a lot of times when we're looking at economic development, especially in smaller rural communities, there's this idea that we can just land this big company, Tesla will move in our community, employ a lot of individuals, and everybody will be wealthy. And the reality is that's very difficult. That's like hitting a grand slam. And so what we wanted to do is just take some smaller approaches. And we feel that if we have nice parks, nice trails, a good quality of life, one, that is good for the residents that currently live here. And then second, what will happen is hopefully that will attract new individuals that are familiar with, hey, look, San Juan County has a nice park system, a nice trail system. And hopefully that'll bring that residential development aspect. And then ultimately, hopefully that will recruit those businesses that, hey, I want to relocate in your community because you have these amenities. And I know my employees will be able to be set up for success and they won't leave the area. So that's how we approached this master plan. Of course, very conscientious. When we started this out, it was in one federal administration and then it changed to another federal administration. But we didn't want to skew what the long-term goals for our community would be. But we did recognize that could influence some of the funding that would be related to the projects that I put forward. So when we were looking at our area, first and foremost, what we wanted to do is take a full inventory of what we had and then identify where there was a need and where we needed to make some improvements. We also recognize from the county standpoint, there's only so much we can do. There's only so much land under our control and only so many dollars that we have. So we recognize we're going to need to partner with other entities, federal government, tribal government, and so forth. We try to put out a marketing campaign, and we identified just different clusters. San Juan County, again, is a big area, and we didn't want to just have meetings or hear from folks within the Farmington or Aztec area. We actually went out to certain communities as opposed to having the communities come to us. And that's where we thought we'd have a better chance of getting feedback. Sorry, I went a little too fast. So here's what we had ended up doing. We had 9 different public events. We held them at different community gatherings, such as a balloon rally, the Navajo or Shiprock Fair, mountain bike race in Farmington. We knew that individuals would be out there, and that would be a great opportunity to hear from them. And why I just kind of want to mention this, and first and foremost, is this is trying to build the feedback, build the momentum. If we are to do something and we're going to go to elected officials, this is the planning effort. This is going to make up some of the planning efforts so that we do get buy-in from individuals that control the policy and the procedures and the money. And so from that, we had heard different areas from different people, what they like about our area, where they recreate, and so forth. And we also tied into how outdoor recreation, getting out and about, could be beneficial for local businesses and is just the local economy. And I want to highlight that we thought this was going to be important because when we're talking about putting money, public dollars towards trails, towards walking paths, a lot of times you can be met with a lot of resistance, especially if there is a road or a bridge or other priorities. A lot of times outdoor recreation, trails and so forth can be put on the back burner. And so we wanted to show that, no, there is an economic gain from this facility, that there is a behavioral and a physical health that can be gained from this. But we wanted to put in the forefront that outdoor recreation has a nexus to the economy. Showed how it has been beneficial across the United States and how specifically it's been beneficial within New Mexico. Some of the added values within the economy and so forth. And then try to showcase this at different outdoor recreation conferences, similar to what you're doing right now, is to try to gain some knowledge from other communities where they've had success and where they've had failures. We thought, this is always important. New Mexico, I think, does very well in that we work together in a lot of many ways, but we also sometimes don't toot our own horn. We kind of stay in the shadows a lot of times. And so if there's ever opportunities to go to an outdoor recreation conference or other venues like this one today to learn about what has been successful and what have been those failures, I would highly encourage that. What we wanted to also do with this plan is to show that how families are getting out and enjoying the area. Just different things within our community, from getting out on the river, a business that's making boats, Jack's Plastic Welding Shop, and then actually even utilizing some of that technology for one of the recent space missions that I'm sure you saw a couple of months ago. That device was made by a local business here in Aztec. Again, Aztec's a small community, 6,200. And so that gives me hope. If there's small communities within our state, this could be an example where, they still had success, even though they may not have necessarily the bandwidth as a bigger city like Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces. Always just highlighting what we have in our area and why it's important. We're not just catering to one group, and then highlighting how this can be an opportunity for tourism. Within our community, we have arches, we have horseback riding, and then where we're starting to utilize some of these funding mechanisms, these grants, is getting out on a bike, and then of course some of the motorized trails. We had worked with a company to build out a bike, and I'm going to skip through these slides for the sake of time. Kind of go directly in terms of some of the signage. This is an easy one. This would be an easy one for a Trails Plus grant. If that opportunity comes up for signage, we had heard that people want to go outdoors but they get lost, and so an opportunity to get out and put some meaningful signage. We know that not everybody can hike 40 miles. Sometimes people want to walk a mile and then head back, and then making sure that people know where they can head back in a safe manner was important. We also did that within the river corridor as well. And then I'm just going to highlight briefly some of the success, as Peter mentioned, with the RTP grant that we've had. These are some of the success stories, and this is not just to highlight, how great we've done and how easy it is, but I do want to just mention this is what RTP did for our community. We were able to add miles of trails, and then even take an area where we had some conflict where people were shooting, be able to designate that as a dedicated trail. Again, some more highlights there. Getting people out and about on a pedestrian bridge was another success. This wasn't an RTP or TAP grant. This was a county initiative. But again, this was highlighting how it's important for individuals throughout San Juan County to get out and enjoy the amenities, and just taking a walk can do a great deal for their both physical and mental health. These are some before and after grants, before and after projects that we got grant funding. This is from the Office of Natural Resource. So another opportunity potentially to look at for funding, and I'll share exactly where that funding came from. This was specifically to make improvements along our river so that people would be able to put in a boat and take out a boat easily. And of course, what we did is we also highlighted some areas in our community that we may not have direct control over, but we want to work with local amenities to make some improvements where there would be an opportunity to partner with the county and that local entity, especially knowing that they may have limitations. And outdoor recreation marketing grant came up. I don't think they currently have that right now, but I'm hoping Evan Williams can bring that back on the forefront. This was a smaller grant opportunity through the Outdoor Recreation Division. What we did is we worked with a company called Gravel Adventure Field Guides. We have a lot of oil field roads in our area. As mentioned earlier, trails can be controversial. They can be complicated because you need to design them. You need to clear the environment. And a lot of times people don't want a trail in their backyard. In fact, we ran into, unfortunately, a situation where we had grant funds for a Rails to Trail project, and the property owners came out fully against it. It was a case of, I don't want it in my backyard, and it's going to bring a lot of undesirable things to my community. And so we had to pivot, and unfortunately, that project was not a success. But what we did is, with this project, is there's already permitted oil field roads. We worked with a company to route them. You know, people want to go out and recreate, but they don't know where to go. They're scared of getting lost, and that can be a safety concern and a deterrent for people getting out and about. So here's a couple of pictures of what oil field roads look like in our community, and then how we wanted to be able to utilize them, getting people out and about on a bike. And this was some of the routes that the individuals put together for us. Just can't show up. There's try to play with PowerPoint a little too much, but here's what the routes look like, highlighting specific areas within our community, everything from Aztec to the Bloomfield area. We wanted to make sure that every community got a route designated. Now, I will say a lot of individuals wanted to look at Shiprock. That is a very unique site within San Juan County, but that is on tribal property. And we wanted to respect the fact that we don't want everybody just to go on tribal land and to utilize a very sacred asset. So unfortunately, we did not put that in here because we wanted to respect a tribal government. And so that's something we just want to be cognizant of. I'm going to show hopefully a video. Hopefully there is sound. This will give a better highlight of what gravel cycling is in our community. And really, this was just a low-hanging fruit that we were able to do for not a lot of money. So hopefully this plays.
San Juan Basin in northwest New Mexico presents adventure cyclists with surreal landscape sculpted by a geologic process dating back millions of years. Located in the Four Corners region of northwestern New Mexico, this prehistoric land continues to evolve over time. Gravel Adventure Field Guide has mapped over 700 miles of routes through this otherworldly terrain. No matter which cardinal direction you go, expect rough and sandy overland roads, including segments of rocky double track and single track. 42 to 50 millimeter tires are recommended. For millennia, people have lived on this land. The roads and vistas reveal its place in the universe. Some believe the San Juan Basin has attracted the attention of intergalactic visitors. In 1948, it is alleged that a 90-foot wide flying object crashed outside of Aztec, New Mexico. Let me show you. Just the the exact spot of the alleged UFO crash, and you can even ride to it. Many believe intergalactic visitors have always been a part of the Four Corners region. Visit graveladventurefieldguide.com for more information. Click the Get One link for locations to pick up your free San Juan County field guide. We appreciate your support as we make gravel accessible to everyone. Until next time, keep gazing at the stars and follow us on Instagram for more wondrous places to ride gravel.
Well, that's kind of a little bit about just some low-hanging fruit, what we were able to do with the Gravel Field Adventure Guides. And that's really what we try to do with this book and try to sell it to the community. Is initially we thought we need to market San Juan County to individuals that are not familiar with our area. But what we came to find out is actually a lot of people within our area have never really got outside their homes and visited our area. And so it became a marketing guide for people within San Juan County. We also allowed local businesses to advertise within the book. And that's so we had buy-in from local businesses, tourism, and really the goal, as the video had mentioned, was just getting people out on a bike and exploring what we have in our own backyard at a relatively low cost. And so that was a grant from Outdoor Recreation Division. I would say working with Evans, I know he can put you in the right direction. But we try to utilize some of these grant funds in a mechanism where we know at San Juan County we don't have a lot of the resources. We know this is a finite amount of funds, and so what we try to do is pair with ORD if there's an opportunity for funding for design or environmental clearance. We apply through that route, like a master plan, and we use that master plan to get buy-in from the community to make sure our elected officials know that, hey, this is important and we want to put this on our ICIP capital list and start reserving money for these projects. And then from there, we do a lot of the legwork. So if we have a project that's designed, we have buy-in from the community, then we could apply for an RTP or a TAP grant for construction dollars. And so we're not just using one source of funds. We're hopefully trying to utilizing many different funds to get this project done. They don't always come to success. As I mentioned, we had a Rails to Trail project that didn't come to fruition. But I think that's why it's important to get buy-in from your community early on. And I think what's important now with changes in state law as of this last legislative session, a project over $100,000, and a lot of these big projects are going to be over $100,000, have to be identified on your ICIP list. So if there's a nonprofit or there's another entity that's not eligible for applying, it's very important that you're working with your local officials, your local government to get that plan on that document so that you can have a success in obtaining those funds. And with that, I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Yeah, Stephen, first on my list is for our coordinators who are like, community connectors, community organizers, but folks that aren't directly embedded in their local governmental systems. What are the types of organizations or the key people within their counties or within their local municipalities that they want to make sure they get in contact with, build relationship with, and or not only the people, but like the types of meetings that they want to look out for that might be hosted where they can embed themselves to start building relationships and advocating for these types of active transportation initiatives and activities and projects that we really want to move forward throughout Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I would say, first and foremost, I think an approach that I would take is that if you are not within the local government, you are within the nonprofit or other entities, I think it would be beneficial to not only reach out to the individuals within your community. So that could be a public works director, that could be the community development department planner, that could be that local county or city manager. And I would say, I think it'd be important to set up a meeting first and foremost with them, bringing forward their ideas, the concept, and why you want to do this and why it'd be beneficial. I think sometimes through my experience, I've noticed different entities will go directly to a public meeting, and that can get everybody on edge immediately, and not everybody has understanding of why you want this project or what it means and what it's going to cost. And of course, a lot of folks will get into their corner and not be receptive of the idea. I think it's important to at least have that initial conversation. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to achieve. This is why I'm trying to achieve it for the community. And this is what I believe the long run benefits are going to be, not only for the entities that I serve, but as the entities that this community serves, be it the local government. And then from there, I think there's an opportunity to try to continue to build that momentum. And then hopefully that individual within the local government will identify areas where they can be helpful or where they can lend support, especially if it's going to be put on their ICIP project. If not, they may not be familiar with some of these funding mechanisms, TAP, RTP, ORD, Office of Natural Resources. And so then it would be a good opportunity to show them, well, hey, look, we're not asking for local government to fund everything. This is an opportunity where I could be successful to help you apply, or I could apply under your letterhead or your name. I just need your buy-in. And I think it's important that the elected officials know that this is important for the community. This is why we did that public campaign, because it's not going to, a lot of times elected officials will say, well, it's just this one group, and they'll dismiss it. Well, it's this one group that wants it, but nobody else wants it. We got bridges and roads to focus on. So that's why you're going to have to bring forward, hey, it's 800 individuals that said getting out and about is important for their mental and physical health. And here's the long-term effects, because if we don't do this, this is what we're going to be facing in 10 years, and this is going to be a higher cost. And so my hope is have that conversation early on, so that people are not put in a corner or in a box and easily reject the idea before getting to know that idea better.
Awesome. Thank you. And then speaking to the ISIP list, infrastructure capital improvement plan, you mentioned if a project of a certain size, if it's ever going to see funding in the future, it's going to have to be on the ISIP list. Say, and that Alex handed out for you all. I went through everybody's ISIP list for all the communities in your counties. And I just selectively pulled out some communities have 100 or 200 different projects that are prioritized on their ISIP lists. And I specifically pulled out things that pertain to our work, right? Increasing opportunities for healthy eating and physical activity. With this stuff, really, we're concentrating on physical activity in the built environment, but I also pulled out stuff related to healthy eating because it's, the other important arm of our work. And you all and I can meet separately on those to look at specific projects and things that we want to help support. But say a community, Stephen, has 50 different priorities listed on their ISIP list, and a park improvement or striping on a road to help, increase pedestrian safety or bicycling safety is number 50 on the list. It's bottom of the list. Does that mean that it's a lot lower priority that it's going to ever get funded? And just because it's 50 on the list, does that mean that it is the bottom priority and it's always going to be on the bottom priority? Or is there a way that local community advocates can advocate such that it maybe doesn't sit number 50 on the list forever, but it gets higher priority and higher attention?
Yeah. So I'd say, if a project is on the list, first of all, I'd say kudos to that community to first have it on the list. So that's a good first start. Second, to try to move it up on the list, there's a couple of different things that a community can do. Is one, like you all in the room are going to try to do, is advocate on why this needs to be a priority. And maybe it's not this year, but it needs to be considered for the coming year. And you want to make sure that you just don't get on the list and it just gets buried and it just stays stagnant. Now, I will say through my experience with the project, we had a project on the list that was at the bottom of the list. And this was to build out a crisis triage center specifically for behavioral and mental health. And we had it on the list at the bottom because at the time of the list being compiled, the project or the feasibility wasn't complete yet. We had just an arbitrary number. What had happened is we recognized, working with our local representatives, our local senator, and the governor's office, that the governor had a priority list and a crisis triage center was going to be on top of that. And so what we did was we took a project that was on the bottom of our list when it came to legislative funding, which will come out in December. So just always remember to how to get a project to actually gets over the finish line is there has to be a legislative request for it. And so that's just as important as putting a project on the list. Somebody has to make a request from the local government to the representatives, to the Senate, or to the governor's office. And so we took that project from the bottom all the way to a request to the governor's office, and we were successful in that venture. And so I think a strategy could be is that even if a project is on the bottom of the list and there may be other projects ahead of it, like higher projects like road or public safety, that elected officials are reluctant to put, let's say, a trail, what you can utilize is, hey, look, there's going to be X amount of dollars for capital outlay, and typically we see anywhere from an average of $2 to $3 million. Not all projects get funded fully, but there could be a way where you can put forward your street project or your public safety project, but to also throw in, hey, I just need $500,000 for this trail system, and you can phase it. And so that may be an opportunity where legislators have leftover money to say, hey, look, we got 500,000 left over. What do I see from this community? We've already given them 2 million, but I still have this money left over. That may be an opportunity to get a first phase or to get a design or to continue on this project. So it's not just this zero sum game where, well, there's a bridge in front of me, or there's this big public safety campaign that I'm just not going to be able to get any momentum on. I would still utilize it as a mechanism to put it in. The worst that could happen is they say no. But the other strategy is if you continue at it, that this is a project that's in high importance, we need this recreation amenity, and you don't have success this year, you bring it the same thing back up next year. And eventually people are going to realize this is important to the community. It's important to the local legislators. It's important to the governor's office to get funded.
You can also ask, how did they get a project on the ISIP list in the first place?
Rita had a great question, Stephen, and it's if there's, in that case, right, the community had already prioritized, the local government had already prioritized getting a project or an initiative on the ISIP list. What if there's a project that the community or our coordinators have identified would be beneficial to supporting public and mental health in the community, but it's not yet on an ISIP list? Where do they start from there so that they can get it on the ISIP list?
Yeah, so like let's say it's right now. ISIP list has already went out. I think DFA has already had their deadline to prove it. I wouldn't let that be a barrier. I think this is the great time to start making the headways right now. Not everybody's going to buy into certain projects. And so you do have to be able to show them with data, with some personal stories, with campaigns that this is important to the community. It's just as important as this road project. And so hopefully when DFA puts out the call for projects, that could be an opportunity for those local officials to put it. But I would always look out for, and if you don't look out, I would directly reach out to local governments to identify when are you having your public meetings for ICIP. So at San Juan County, we have 2 meetings every year, one at Lower Valley Senior Center, one at the county building. We advertise it. We ask for feedback. This year, we got a lot of great feedback from the seniors. We got a lot of great feedback from individuals about a sewer system. We're not dictating what projects should be on the list. We're actually wanting to hear from the community. And then what we do from that meeting is then we bring that feedback to our county commission and we say, here's the areas and topics that the community said. Take that into consideration for building out this list. And so that I would suggest, if you have a project in mind and it's not currently on the list, one, I would ask those local officials, when's the next public meeting that you're specifically going to discuss ICIP prior to it being on the list? And if there's not a public meeting, then again, I would reach out directly to have a meeting with that elected official or with those county administrators or city administrators to say, this is why it should be on the list.
Awesome. And then I'm not sure to what degree you'll know this because you represent San Juan County, but do you know if statewide if there's any mandate that local communities hold their own ISIT meetings, or is it really going to be county to county, municipality to municipality? It may depend. And if they don't hold them, that's when it comes to community advocates like our Healthy Kids coordinators to say we're building out and we're reaching out and we're building relationships with the managers and the counselors and the local representatives in our community so we can discuss these issues in the case that they may not be proactive like you all and setting up these outreach kinds of events and these ISIT meetings where we already have built-in mechanisms to solicit feedback from the community.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, there's no mandate, but it is encouraged by DFA, and I'd like to believe that DFA looks highly upon those that do put forward a public meeting, and that's when we submit our information to DFA, we show the newspaper clippings of where we advertise the meeting and so forth. I know a lot of communities don't put forward a public meeting, but what they have to do is if they're going to make a consideration for their elected body to make a decision, is they have to have this item on a meeting, and that is a public meeting. Now, my caution is it could be on a consent agenda and it never gets discussed fully, but that could be an opportunity to look out for it in July and August timeframe. But they will have these meetings, and so I would encourage you to attend those meetings at the time. Again, I would just be proactive. I wouldn't just be waiting for that meeting. I would be advocating right now if you have a project in mind. Because even if you do have the public meeting and you say this is how great this project is, and you only show up in that July timeframe and nowhere else, it can be easily dismissed, or it could easily be put on the bottom of that list. And so I'd say there has to be a lot of legwork. And no time better than now to get it on the next year's list if it's not currently there.
All super beneficial information. Thank you. Yeah, you. Rita's got a question.
And this is getting a little bit more in the weeds, Stephen, because, you know, Peter talked about the different kinds of trail facilities. So bike and peds only, mixed use, motorized vehicles. And I know that that's happened in all Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities, where people that have ATVs or other motorized ways, there can be conflict between people that don't want to hear motors on trails and bike trails or pedestrian pet trails or horseback riding trails. So how do you work with the community to address motorized vehicle trail access? Like, is it separate? I feel like that's something that's going to have to be addressed.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's the reality. And we run into that issue here in San Juan County. And so I'll give you an example where there's a couple of mountain bike trails that were built within the last 10 years, and there's been a conflict on dirt bikes using them, and that creates a conflict between users. And so I think that the best practice that we've learned through some of these planning efforts, and then just talking to experts across the state and across the United States, when you want to avoid conflict is you want to have dedicated trails. So specifically, you want to have a dedicated mountain bike trail and a dedicated motocross trail. And hopefully there's some separation and some signage and some infrastructure that make it conducive so that one is not going to enter that trail system and vice versa. Part of it also is an educational campaign in that here's the signage that needs to exist and here's the courtesy that goes with it. So for example, we have trails where individuals will utilize horses, but people are also utilizing their bikes as well. And that can be a conflict between the two user groups. And so what we've asked, and we try to educate, and this is where I think nonprofits really come in handy, is there has to be this type of etiquette that exists where if you're on a mountain bike, let the horse pass. A horse could be an animal and can do some stuff that can hurt everybody involved. Just be courteous. And some of the campaigns that I've noticed that have been successful is slow down, say hi, and then just go on your business. But in terms of the infrastructure, there is a plan, at least within San Juan County, is that if we don't address certain user groups, we're going to continue to have the conflict. And And so that's where motorized and non-motorized facilities have to be part of that equation, or else we're going to just get individuals that feel they're being left out, and they're going to start utilizing facilities that are not typically intended for them, and that's where we get problems.
So if you have facilities for motorized usage that are separate, does that suffice as long as they're diverse enough and they're long enough and they provide enough terrain for those motorized vehicles? I'm thinking of it because I know in Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities already that's been a discussion, that's been a pressure point for especially motorized, well, just the conflicts between people that want to use RTVs and people that don't want them in the outdoor natural environment. That you have to consider both.
Yeah, and you're always going to have, and we have it here, somebody that uses an ATV that goes on crosses a mountain bike trail and destroys the trail in the process. And so there has to be, I'd say a couple of things. There has to be even an area where there's signage. So one, you sign it, this is clearly a pedestrian biking trail. And this is clearly a motocross trail, so that people unfortunately don't have the excuse to say, well, I didn't know. So it has to be clearly signed. And then there is some infrastructure that can be in place so that it makes it difficult for an ATV or a dirt bike or vice versa to cross it. Mountain bike trails typically have a lot of curves. And so that's how you at least in our understanding is you want to design it where motocross wants to go straight. Now, ATV is a whole different story. They can cross a lot of different things. But if you have structural barriers or guards that make it difficult, that would be one thing. Where we've had success is working with the BLM to try to enforce it as well. Where somebody goes off the course or is just being destructive, hopefully there is an entity that could have punitive damage for those individuals. But your point is correct. I mean, we face it all the time. Sometimes it's frustrating. I get frustrated, and I'll show my bias. I'm a mountain biker, and sometimes where I see a trail blown out or a ATV that has crossed it and destroyed it, it's frustrating because it makes it less safe and makes it less enjoyable. But I'd say the practice is to have facilities for each type of user group, separate them out, create infrastructure that causes barriers or so it's less conducive for them to try to utilize it, signage it so that individuals clearly know what this use is for and not for, and then have some type of enforcement that can hopefully be used as a disincentive for individuals just trying to utilize it when they're unauthorized. A lot of times what we've noticed is some of these trails are out of sight, out of mind, and that's where individuals can unfortunately do damage on them.
Okay, thank you. You want to open it up for questions, and then I'd like to get the presentations.
Yeah. Do we have any additional questions from our Healthy Kids, Healthy Communities crew? Nobody's speaking up yet. Stephen and Peter, would you all be willing to share some PDF versions of your slide decks with us so that we can share them out to our coordinators? They'd just be really nice resources to summarize TAP RTP and then everything you discussed in terms of how you've utilized TAP RTP and or defunding within the county to give some great ideas to our coordinators as they support these types of projects in their communities.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
And I'll also, when I send the information, I'll leave my contact. So if anybody within your group wants to contact me specifically, if there's any questions or concerns that come up afterwards, feel free.
We thank you so much for your time. If everybody from our group would give them a round of applause. Thank you all. We really appreciate your time. And like we said earlier, we're trying to really bolster and make more robust our engagement with the built environment throughout Healthy Kids. And so we really appreciate learning from some pros who've been putting these practices into, or have been putting this type of work into practice and making good use of this funding in local communities up in San Juan County. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Have a good day. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Hi guys, we've got a 14-minute break.